Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You are tuned in to Portrait Lighting Unlocked, Diagrams and Deconstructions with Sarah Edmunds, hosted by Godox. A huge thank you to them for hosting, and an extra special thank you. Our platform, our viewers, everybody loves you, Sarah. It's like you always get such a great response when you're on. Thank you for coming back on.
I'm so delighted to be back. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And now that you are on, I'm going to take the spotlight and put it solely on you. I'm going to tuck myself into the background and become a viewer and a learner myself. Everybody, if you do have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. Sarah is very good about getting to your questions. So Sarah, take it away. I'll see you in a bit for some Q&A.
Okay, I will go ahead and share my screen. And here we go. Portrait Lighting Unlocked. So the last time I was here at B&H, if you haven't seen that webinar, do go and take a look. It's called Mastering Lighting with Godox. And in some of the comments that I had and in some of the feedback, I love answering all of your questions, and stay to the end for the Q&A because I would love to hear your questions. But also on the replay, if you have any questions, write them down in the comments because I will come back and I'll answer them. And I might even come back with another webinar as well, like this one, because somebody actually suggested to me that they wanted to see more lighting diagrams, the breakdown of where the lights are, and above all, why. So what have I chosen and why? That's what we're going to be doing here today. And there's a lot of material to get through. So hold on to your hats. It's going to be quite a ride. So I'm going to put this up at the end as well, but just in case, the Facebook group, please join. And I'm always in there ready to answer your questions as well. Love to hear from you there. And I'm going to move on because it'll all be at the end. Don't worry, I'm going to give you lots of QR codes at the end. What are we going to be doing for the next hour? I'm going to dive straight into the content, and that's unlocking portrait lighting diagrams. And this is some of my work, just a quick flash. I'm not going to spend a long time talking about me because I did that in the last webinar. So if you want to know more about me, please go and take a look at that. But everybody always wants to know what my gear is, so I'll quickly run through that. My camera, I have two Sony a7R3s, might be upgrading, not sure. They're doing me absolutely fine for now. I've had them for about 5 years and love them. Lenses 70 to 200 2.8 is probably my favorite. That always comes with me. 50 1.4 is my second favorite. 85 I love for the studio, and a 35 I take with me for weddings. Both of those are 1.4. My Godox lighting equipment. I'm a Godox fanatic. I love my Godox lights. I'm an ambassador for them, but I loved my Godox lights for many years before they asked me to be their ambassador. That's why they asked me to be their ambassador. So these are the lights that I own and possess, and all of these modifiers. I used to use the X Pro trigger, and I now absolutely cannot be without my X3 touchscreen trigger. Amazing. These are my loves. I started with Godox in 2017 with my 8200s, the very first release, and I'm still using them. I will be upgrading very, very soon, though. Keep your eyes peeled for that coming out soon. Some more videos showing you the latest releases. And the 8300 Pro is always with me, and I do love the 8100 Pro as well, the little soda can sized light. But we have some new stuff out that I cannot not tell you about because it's big news. It's the new 8600 Pro 2, and that syncs automatically with the X3 touchscreen trigger and the 8200 Pro 2s. So that's what I'm going to be upgrading my ancient 8200s. I'm going to be taking the leap and getting those 8200 Pro 2s because of the color. First of all, there are many, many reasons. And in my Godox tutorials with these products, I will go into much greater detail about them. But the thing that I really love is the color coding, because it means that I can see at a glance which light is on which group. So, and I've tried out the 8600 Pro 2 is an absolute workhorse for the studio, and that's my new studio favorite. And I also love this little on-camera flash. And I haven't used an on-camera flash for most of my career. I managed to get away with that without putting a flash actually on my camera until very, very recently. The V1 Pro is great on camera and off. So that's the V1 Pro. These are my wedding lighting kit modifiers because they're really portable. They pop up and pop down, and they have the magnetic attachments. That's for weddings, but we're not talking about weddings today. We're talking about portrait. And the studio lighting kit, the modifiers that I use the most are these ones. And these are the things that you're going to see me walking you through all of the diagrams and the behind the scenes of the portraits that I'm going to be using. For many years, I lived with the one that you can see on the left, which is 120 centimeters with a diffuser and with a grid. So with and without the grid, I used that in the studio with my 8200s for ages. I've since added the lantern, which is great for providing directional because the light is shooting through. There's a bulb that's pointing straight the way through, but it's also going outwards as well. And that 360 light sends everything going off to the white ceilings and the white walls. So you get a directional light and also a fill. It's kind of a 2-in-1. The big reverse umbrella is delightful, and it's very light and it's very inexpensive, an absolutely amazing bargain and beautiful quality light. And I also love the silver beauty dish when I want something to be a little bit more specular in terms of that light fall off. So lighting is so important. Photography is all about lighting. Photography, that's literally what it means. Writing with light. You have to understand lighting, whether it's natural or artificial. Once you understand lighting and the way that it falls and how it works, then you can envisage something in your mind and bring it to life. So I'm just going to quickly go over, very, very quickly go over my 3Ds, which is what I remember to describe how we obtain quality of light. Okay, this mysterious thing, quality of light, what does it mean? It's simply the way that the light falls on a subject because of the direction, the diffusion, and the distance. So the direction is causing those lighting patterns to fall on the face. The diffusion is about softening the light. It's about that shadow fall off, that light fall off, and the harshness of the shadows. And the distance is power and also softness and hardness as well. So understanding those three things, if you can harness those three things, you can harness the power of light. One key thing before we get stuck into the images and the diagrams is understanding the concept of feathering. Feathering simply means that you are, if you imagine a feather, you've got the spine down the middle, and then you've got the feathery bit going out to the side. So if we think of the light, the main beam of light, the hot spot, the most concentrated part of the light being that spine in the middle of that bone in the middle of the feather, and then we just want the edges of the feather to just touch the subject. And we do that by making the light point across the subject, or sometimes away from the subject. Sometimes the light isn't pointing anywhere near the subject at all. You're going to see that on the diagrams, and I need you to understand that, because that's all about controlling the light and exactly what part of the light we want to fall on the face of the subject. So let's get started. Let's start with a simple one. This is a one light shot, and this is with the 1200, the AD 1200 Pro. You'll find that I'm using the AD series a lot because of the lack of, you don't have to plug them in. They're battery operated. You can take them outside, indoors, anywhere. You don't have wires cluttering up the studio. This is the AD 1200 with the ring flash attachment. And I tried it on axis, but which gives a great, really, really sort of paparazzi look. But then I just wanted to get a little bit more drama, and I took it off axis. So I got my stylist to hold it up high, and it was at more or less a 45-degree angle. So there we go, AD 1200 Pro. Now, you might notice that I'm not giving you exact settings of the camera or the lights at this point, and I'm doing that for a reason. The reason is that I want you to learn to see. So I don't want you to write down my exact settings and then think that that's the recipe to then go into the studio. And if you just copy everything that I've done, you'll get exactly the same. I want you to look at your results, look at Shoot Tethered or look in the back of the camera and ask yourself, is this what I want the light to be doing? And the only way that this can really sink in, you can really get a hold of and a control of light, is by putting in the miles and shooting and experimenting and looking, asking yourself, where are those shadows going? Where are those highlights? Is that rim light too harsh? You can, I feel like, tell me in the comments if you've ever been to a workshop and the instructor has said to you, okay, my settings are f4, 200th of a second, and the lighting is, and then you do it and you take the picture and then you go home and then you think, what was that? What am I supposed to do? I don't understand. That's because if I just give you a recipe and you try to replicate it, you're not really learning by finding things out for yourself. So I want you to look at these ideas and then go into the studio and try it out for yourself and try again. Look at the image, come back and ask yourself, do I need to move this light 3 inches that way or a foot backwards? You tell me. So this is another one light setup, and this is a very simple. It's let's go back and let me just take a look at the shadow under her nose. It's not a perfect butterfly, a butterfly being that shadow that's very central underneath the nose. It's not quite touching the lip, and it's in the shape of a butterfly, otherwise known as Paramount lighting or Hollywood lighting. It's slightly off. It's not quite central. That's because I didn't have a boom arm and I just needed to move the light stand out of the way so that I could be central. And that's all that is. Simple one light shot. And there you can see from a different angle. With this shot, I just took the 100, no, it wasn't. It was the 85 centimeter softbox. I turned it from where I was standing. It was camera left. I just put it behind the model. This was when I was doing a live broadcast, live shooting, and I still had 15 minutes left and I didn't know what else to do. And all of a sudden I thought, okay, I know what I'm going to do. Let's just turn this around. So that might be an idea to try. And I put the light behind the model. So there she is. She's standing in front of the light and there's nothing in front. Now, notice that she's close enough to the light that the light is wrapping around slightly and it's coming from the other side of the softbox and it's just lighting her cheekbone there and it's wrapping around her figure. So it's not a pure silhouette. If she had come slightly towards the camera, so away from the light, she would have been just pure black. But I positioned her so that I got a little bit of lighting around her. This is from a commercial shoot, and here I was shooting on location. So I had my AD300 Pro and a reflector providing a clamshell setup. So this is pretty much, as you can see, I was holding the silver reflector very close to the model and quite flat. And I found that it needs to be at the right angle so that the softbox is providing light that's falling both on the face and hitting the reflector. So if it was just pointing down and hitting the reflector, then we'd have too much light coming up from below, which we don't want. It looks a little bit spooky. So it's about getting that balance. And in this case, I got a really nice fill, but it's not overpowering coming from that silver reflector. This is I was actually demonstrating a Rembrandt light setup for some students at a workshop. And it's just one light, one gridded softbox, very close to the model. And as you can see, it's providing that perfect Rembrandt light. But obviously, the Rembrandt light really depends on the angle of the model's face in comparison to or in relation to the softbox. So if she were to turn her face more, we would have had pure split lighting. So I had to spend just a few moments with the model saying, follow my nose. I usually hold my finger up and I say, bring your nose around, bring your nose around, bring your nose around. Okay, stop. It has to be very, very precise. When the light is gridded in that way, the light is very, very controlled. So you can see that that's enabled us to get this really dramatic look. So this was an AD600 Pro with a 120 centimeter gridded softbox, one light. This is also one light, but with a different modifier. Same, maybe it was a less powerful light. I think this might have been the AD300 Pro. And we have, remember the feathering that we were talking about? This is the reverse umbrella with diffusion. Now you can see on the 3D models, you can see that there isn't a diffuser. That's just because I wasn't able to put that in the software, but there was a diffusion sock over the front of that. So the light is pointing into the umbrella. So the light is pointing away from the model. And in this way, we get a really large, soft light that doesn't have that hot spot. That doesn't have that very hard hot spot if it were the other way round and pointing through a softbox. So the result, as you can see, is super soft, but still directional. And on the left there, you can see the extent of the feathering of that. So in this image, we still have one light, and it's the AD100 Pro. And it just goes to show you that you don't need a lot of power to create a lot of light. Really depends on your lighting settings. I love to shoot very shallow depth of field in the studio, and that allows me to get lots of power from even just a speed light. So in this setup, I've got the light in a softbox above the model and coming over her shoulder, pointing into V-flats that are then bouncing that light in a really soft way back into her. And it looks really, really soft. It almost looks like natural light. People struggle to tell me what lighting setup this is usually when I ask them what I've used here. I also had one of the little reflectors that comes with the softbox, the Godox softboxes that you can put inside. I've just used that as a little mini reflector. And there you can see from the other side. You might see this setup coming up again soon. This was also with one light, but it wasn't one shot, I will confess. But the only reason it's not one shot is because of the size of the white seamless backdrop. It wasn't big enough to hold all of the people. So I believe that this is 2 or 3 shots. And this is the setup. Here I've got the same reverse umbrella used with the AD300 Pro. It's pulled back a little bit to allow for a more even spread across the group. And again, it's feathered quite a bit. There you can see. And then I put that together. One thing that I did to make this easier, because I actually did the headshots of these women, all of these women in one day, and I did a dark group where they were all dressed in black on a dark gray background. And I did the light, the high key setup. And I also did all of their headshots in both dark and white. So, and that was in one day. So in order to make this group shot easier to do, I had them pose in sections and then had them move up, and then had the last person who was going to be not in the group, but would be in the next group, I would have them come in on the edge just to make it that overlap easier to do the composite later. Don't know if that made sense. Happy to answer questions about that later. Right, this picture of my lovely daughter a few years ago is a 2-light setup. And the reason I added the second light, because very often, I'll be honest, I love one light. I really do. You can do so much with one light, but sometimes you just need a little bit more impact and dimensionality, let's say. Dimensionality is something that you can get by adding lights. Not too many lights, because when you get to past about 4 lights, you start having too much light everywhere. But in this case, I wasn't able to see the pampas grass that I was shooting through. So I put an overhead light above her and pointing slightly behind her. Very low power. If you look at this, it doesn't look like there's a light above her. So this is all about subtlety, and this is what I mean when I say go into the studio, look, take a look and see what it is you want. Really learn to see. I'm not saying don't use light meters. If you like to use light meters, then absolutely fantastic. If your brain works that way, mine doesn't. And also I taught myself to shoot without a light meter. So that's just the way that I just feel it now. I just know. I just know what it is I need to do. If that's the way you like to work, then fantastic. But still look at the pictures. I see when I'm teaching, I see so many students just shooting, and they're not looking at what they're getting. You must stop, look to see if you're on the right track, because you might need to just change something just a tiny little bit. And a light meter is not going to tell you where to angle your light. It can tell you what power to put your camera or what settings to put your camera on, but it's not going to give you the angle of light. And that's what you really need to learn to see. And that I really encourage you to practice as much as you can. This is a situation of what I've done. Let me just go back and show you. Let me just explain what it is I was trying to do. I wanted to have the light just picking up her hair, but I wanted it to be really subtle. So this is rim light, but it's rim light that nobody would look at and say, that's rim light, okay? Subtlety. So I've got the big umbrella on a really low power, and I've got a gridded beauty dish to just put a pop of light just on her face. And then I've got the silver reflector that is reflecting the big reverse umbrella that is providing the hair light, and that's providing the fill that's on her body. So there's that setup there. See the big umbrella just putting that tiny kiss of light on her hair, the gridded silver beauty dish, and a big silver reflector that is providing all of that light on her body that's much, much lower. So that was an AD300 Pro in the umbrella and an AD200 in the gridded beauty dish. And there you can see it from a different angle. With this shoot here, you'll see me using this over it again and again with different modifiers, but the overhead light, and that was because I just wanted to catch that hat that was on her head and just provide some overall fill. And then I've got the lantern softbox, which is that directional yet glowing, bouncing ball of light that is the lantern softbox. And that's providing the key light. So there it is from another angle. Very simple. And you can see that lantern softbox is so soft. She's hardly got any shadows at all. There is a little bit coming down on her cheekbones, but really hardly any shadow under her nose at all. Oh, this is one of my favorite shoots. So in this one, I've got the beauty dish on the main subject, and on a lower power, I've got the AD200s lighting the background, but with gels, 2 different color gels. And the inspiration I got for that was I was actually shooting her with a bright white background. That was my original intention, was to have very high contrast black and white. And then I saw the way that the sequins reflected this fuchsia and the orange, and because it wasn't working with the white background, I didn't keep any of those images at all. It just wasn't working. And I just thought, we need more color. And luckily I had with me, I wasn't in my studio, I was in a rented studio, and luckily I had my gels with me. And then if you watch the video on the Godox channel, and you can see me literally jumping, squealing, that was 100% outtake captured in the moment, because I was just so happy that I'd finally, it was working. Oh my God. You ever get that feeling, right? When you're in the studio and things just aren't working, and then you have an idea and then you just go, oh my God, that's exactly what happened. Ended up being one of my favorite shots. Now, the beauty dish on the subject is cleaning out any, now the other lights with the gels are pointing at the background, so they're not affecting the model. But had they been, the stronger light on the subject without a gel cleans up, washes away any of that color. So that's why we've got a nice clean look on the model herself. This was the same day. And here I'm using a classic 3-point setup, gridded strip boxes, 45 degrees behind, well, not quite 45 degrees, but behind the model and towards the model to provide a little bit of rim light. Gridded, I tend to like gridded because that way the light is more controlled on the shoulder, and the lantern softbox towards the front. I've also got the AD100 with a continuous modeling light and a fuchsia gel to try and just add a little bit of ambient light so that I could slow the shutter speed and get, actually, I think the fuchsia was on this one. And then on this one, the ambient light that you can see from the slow shutter speed is coming from the makeup station. And there was those bulbs, lots of bulbs around the makeup station that was quite bright. And that was providing a warm ambient light that is being let in when I slow the shutter speed. So just a recap for anybody who's not familiar with slow shutter speed in the studio, where the flash is hitting, the flash is going to freeze the subject. So that's why her face is not blurry. And the parts that aren't being caught by the flash so much are in movement because of the slow shutter speed. This one, again, very straightforward 3-point lighting setup with the gridded strip softboxes and a beauty dish in the front. And when I say the controlled rim light, you can see the effects of that here by the dark shadow going down her shoulder. If I didn't have the grid, that probably wouldn't be there. The light would be wrapping around a lot more. So by putting the grid on, I'm really isolating the 3-point light setup. Let's say that I had, instead of a gridded strip box, I just had a softbox, a big round softbox in all 3 positions. Then there would just be light everywhere. The smaller light sources with grids allows me to get some shadow in there. And it's the shadow that creates that shape and that 3-dimensionality. And with this one, we added a 4th light, and that was to light the background. So the background is a cloud backdrop, which is my own, and I printed it. And I've got exactly the same setup, gridded rim lights, beauty dish at the front, and then I've got the AD100 just on the floor on an apple box pointing up, so that we get this, it looks like there's this storm cloud and the sun about to burst through the cloud behind her, but that's the backdrop. And you can just see the little kiss of light on her hands there, and also lighting up her hair. I told you it was going to be packed, right? The good thing is that when this is on the replay, you can go back, and if it's going too fast, you can always go back and watch. So this is starting to get a little bit more complicated now. This is using the BFPs, the projector attachments from Godox, which are fantastic fun. Now, for this shoot, I had 7 setups in one day and 7 changes as well. So 7 changes and 7 lighting, completely different lighting setups. So that's why I've got the reverse umbrella lighting the background on one side and a bare bulb on the other. The only reason for that is that I just needed to have the umbrella ready to go, to just pull around from behind that V flat and bring to the front when I needed it. I didn't have time to put everything up and down. So there's an AD200 on the back on the left, AD300 in the umbrella reverse. So the different powers are sort of compensated by the fact that one's reverse and the other one's just pointing straight. And then I've got the V1 Pro in the front pointing at a reflector, which is lighting up the bottom part of the model. I've got another speed light, I think it's the V863 on the background, just lighting up the lower part of that wall. And then I've got the BFP providing this spotlight. And actually, I should just mention that the BFP on the diagram is on the wrong side, should be over here, because you can see the shadows on the nose is actually coming from camera right, not camera left. So apologies about that. But the BFP is providing the light on the model in this very, very tight circular pattern and creating these really crisp shadows. We've got that reflector light, which is just filling. If you look at her, sorry, let me just go back. If you look at her hand, look at the bottom of her hand, it's not falling into shadow. That's because of that reflector. And then we've got the backdrop being lit completely with those three lights. Remember I said I needed to bring out the reverse umbrella really, really quickly to be able to use it? Well, this is why, because this was the next setup. And in this one, I've got one BFP pointing past the model and creating that white circle on the background. I've got I think it's the V1 Pro or an AD200. I can't quite remember now. I need to go back and check. Doesn't really matter. But one of the smaller lights with a yellow gel, a lime yellow gel, pointing up to the ceiling, because I wanted the light to come from the ceiling and fall down. And I didn't have the height to be able to do what I wanted to do. So I just bounced it instead. And that way the whole ceiling becomes the light source. And at the front here, I've simply got a feathered, no gel, just light, normal, soft light on the front of the model. And the result was this. So what we were going for, this was a very vintage look, playing up the accessories. And so I used the yellow light to pull out from the sunglasses. And that white circle is, look, it's not even, you can even see the blades of the diaphragm from the BFP. So I haven't touched that in Photoshop at all, other than cleaning up a few blemishes on the skin and doing some color correction. Very similar setup for this one. This is, once again, I'm using a gel to fill in the shadows. Remember that the gel fills in the shadows. If there's too much light blasting, that's going to clean away the color. So what we're seeing on the background is the light from the BFP, from one BFP, is going on the background. And that light is providing the white parts of that sunburst. The shadows are being filled by a blue gel. And then I've got another BFP with just some blades to just capture a slice of her face. So there's that setup. One is pointing over her, past her shoulder, not hitting her at all to light the background. We've got the one light pointing at the wall to fill in the shadows, and then the other one with the blades just lighting up her face. And as you can see, there's actually another light just lighting up the bottom part of her, so she's not in complete shadow. Otherwise, the BFP is so controlled, her body would have been totally black. So I did add another little light just so that you can see her body. Very similar thing going on here. This is two BFPs, and that warm light is simply coming from the heater that was heating the model who was freezing in my studio. We couldn't get it warm enough for her. So I quite liked it though, so I left it, and I decided to just leave the bluish tinge towards the shadow at the top and that warmer part as well. That made me think though that perhaps I could add a light and provide more of a gradient like this one. So here we've got the light at the bottom pointing at the background. We've got one BFP providing that white circle, and then we've got another BFP with just those blades providing a triangle. So this is me just absolutely playing in the studio and having a whale of a time. And there we go. This is very, very precise. When you use the BFP, it's very, very precise. And you really need to have a dark studio. Otherwise, you might struggle like I did, because I have a lot of daylight in my studio. So it was very difficult for me to get this exactly right. This one is a little bit simpler. It's just a black V flat placed behind her and the white wall being lit by the lights and one BFP just highlighting. I wanted to really bring attention to the accessories because the whole editorial was about accessories. And there you can see the black V flat behind her. Using gels once again to fill in the shadows. This one is quite softly done because I wanted it to look like nighttime, like it's midnight. So this is in camera. So the fog was there. I had a fog machine, and the blue light is created with, once again, pointing at the ceiling. So a smaller light with it was an AD200 with a blue gel pointing up off the ceiling, and then a gridded softbox on our Cinderella there. And remember me saying about the light cleaning off the gel. So the light on her is stronger than the blue gel, and the saturation of the blue gel comes when the light is on a low power. If the light that you use the gel with is too strong, it will wash out the color. So for rich saturated colors, remember it only is visible in those shadows where there's just a little bit of light. That's when you get the saturation of the color. And there's the same setup, and then from a different angle. This was the same day, and just to keep things quick, I left the light that was pointing up to the ceiling. I left where it was. I just took off the gel, angled it down to her on a very, very low power to provide the tiniest bit of dimensionality, and no modifier because I just didn't have time. And then at the front, I've got my softbox just on camera right this instead. And there it is there. And this gave me the idea to put together this. So this was what I was trying to do. Alice Through the Looking Glass. And I had this frame. It's been in my studio for years. And I finally thought, oh, this would look great. I could have her coming through the mirror. But we couldn't quite get the pose right. It didn't quite work. So I decided to do it as a piece of digital art and as a composite. So here I've taken the picture of the frame and I've put it together with one of the other pictures of her with the teacup. And I did a lot of work on this. This is in 3 parts, and this is on my platform, which you can scan there and you can go and see. You can sign up to be able to see it if you want to. It's a long watch. It's 3 separate, I think it's 3 hours. But it shows you the whole process, and it also shows you my thought process as I'm thinking, maybe I'll try this. No, this isn't working. And then how I'm trying to create the illusion of the frame and the glass, which was very difficult. And I'm not quite sure I got there completely, but I'm about as happy as I can be with this one. So yeah, go and check it out. And there's the before, the during, and the after. This is another one of my favorite bright white background, high contrast. I love to have a dark outfit on a light background or a dark background. And this one, I just felt like the white background was really making it pop. And I also liked the fact that the light falls off a little bit on the background and you can see a little bit of cyan, which I really felt worked really well with the red boots and the red lipstick and the red necklace. So this is simply, I've got an AD300 Pro just blasting at that cyclorama background, and it's just blasting away. It's just really, really strong because I just had the one light and I needed to light the whole of the background. So I just let it rip. And I've got a beauty dish on the face, and that's providing just a little pop of light on the face. And I love the fact that the shadow is just going over her eye like that. It just looks really mysterious. This one has no key light at all. This is just background lights. So the model is close enough. Once again, remember the flute picture at the beginning? This one is similar, but there's a whole white background. So I've got two AD100 Pros, no modifiers, pointing at the backdrop and at an angle that's allowing the whole backdrop to be lit up and also a lot of light to come and onto her face. And I've got black V flats, which are stopping too much light from coming into my lens and being hazy, because that's always a risk. If there's light coming into the lens, then you're going to get this washed out look. That did happen a little bit, which I compensated for in post-production, but I managed to block most of it. Here we have, again, the rim light. We've got a very soft light on camera left, lighting the model, and then a gridded softbox providing that dimension. And the giveaway for me is, once again, it's that shadow that is just creating that three-dimensionality that really looks like you can see the form of the body. Here we go. This is a very classic portrait setup, and it's once again, it's my overhead light and a softbox camera left. Now look at the sheen on her hair. You can see that it's very, very subtle, but it's there. And that comes from a softbox overhead in a boom arm. If you're able to get it completely over, then great. If you want it to light the background, you can have it closer to the background. If you don't want it to light the background, you can have it further forward. You do need to be careful that if it's overhead, it's not hitting the nose too much. It needs to be lower in power in relation to the key light enough that the key light is is the main source of light on the face and not the one that's overhead. So if you look at the picture, you can see that it's very, very subtle, that light coming from overhead. And there's the same setup, but just with the girl facing forwards. Now, you might be forgiven for thinking this is a natural light portrait. It isn't. This is with the AD600 Pro 2, the brand new one that I got to try out. And I'm shooting at f1.4, and I've just got it on really low power. And I'm just using that light to shape I'm putting the shadows exactly where I want to, but I'm still shooting at f1.4, and it's blended with the ambient light. So those shadows are super soft. You can barely see them, but I've still got the control to be able to put those shadows exactly where I want them. And just to be clear on how much is ambient and how much is the strobe, on the left is exactly the same camera settings with all of the strobes turned off, and on the right is with the strobe. This one is with my beloved reverse umbrella, AD600 Pro. She's just lying down. And when she went to lie down, I told her to lie down, and she put her head on the other side, and I quickly said, no, 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 round the other way. Remember, it's a common mistake. The light has to go down the body, okay? Starting from the head and going down. Otherwise, it's just going to look all wrong. And there you can see that setup there. By the way, the photo looked pretty much like this out of camera. I did add some tulle on the backdrop there. I could see a little bit of gray backdrop. I filled that in. I filled in a few bits of hair. I reduced a bit of blemishes, and that's it. Everything else was as is. This is my old favorite, the bounced overhead light. So here we've got the light behind her. We've got the V flats like in a cage around her, and I'm shooting through the gap. I'm using actually a 50mm lens on this one, and I rarely use a 50mm lens that close on a subject, but it really made her look waif-like. So I'm tilting the 50mm lens, and I'm up close and I'm deliberately distorting it, making her body look really tiny and her head look really big. It just gave this waif aspect that just suited this look completely. Going back to something a little simpler, this is shot with a speed light. This is the V1 Pro in the same reverse umbrella. And it's quite heavily feathered, as you can see. I'm shooting quite wide open. I think I'm at f2 here, which is about where I like to sit. I very rarely go more than about f4, really. And I prefer to stay around between f1.4, f2, f2.2, f2.8. That's where I like to shoot. Just because I get more power out of my light and I like the look, I like the way it looks. So that's that setup. Same setup for this one and for this one as well. And here you can see, let's play a video. So you can actually see the extent of feathering there. You can see that it's the V1 Pro. That's the speed light there in that bracket, pointing reverse. And by the way, I shot on that V1 Pro all day long for 7 hours, 7 different looks, and on one battery. It was amazing in the studio. Same V1 Pro. Same V1 Pro. And we're back to my favorite setup, which is this one, but just with the V1 Pro instead of the stronger light. And here we can see another video. Okay. And there it is again. I could have shot forever. Once I got this set up, I was so happy it was going so well. I could have just kept going forever. More video. So you can see it's just right behind her. And I'm shooting through a very, very narrow gap. Again, almost no retouching here, maybe a few blemishes. I didn't even get rid of her braces. And I just use one of my profiles to turn to black and white. Super, super quick. Same setup. And a color profile as well on that one. And here I just lifted up the light. Same setup, I just lifted it higher. And that gave me this beautiful hair light and still the softness coming from the bounce. And I'm shooting through the tiny crack there. I did retouch out the light stand at the top because I could see the light stand coming out of her head. Oh, okay. This is interesting. So here we were at a studio. I wanted it to look like, this was for an editorial, and I wanted it to look like a girls' night out, bachelorette party, bridesmaids and the bride getting ready together and having a night out. And here I wanted it to look like there was light streaming in through the window, and I've got the lantern softbox and I've got the Speedlight V8603 in the AKR21 projector attachment. So that's a speed light that's providing that pattern, and then the other light with the lantern softbox providing the fill. So there is that setup there. This is natural light. So there was actually a window there, and this is natural light. And I just told the model playing the bride to stay really, really, really still, and I got the others to move around while I was at a slow shutter speed. And the same shoot, then to give this sort of naughty nighttime vibe, I've just got the on-camera flash and a nice high shutter speed, probably at about 200th of a second, to make sure that those shadows were really dark and crisp. I wanted it to look flashed. I wanted it to look paparazzi-like, because this look is really popular right now in Italy. Everybody goes nuts for this. The models loved this. They thought this was absolutely fantastic. So yeah, you spend decades trying to get your flash off the camera, and then it becomes fashionable to put it back on. There we go. And then this is more my cup of tea. This is the lantern softbox, providing beautiful soft light on the three girls. And that's that setup there. Back to the V1 Pro in the reverse umbrella. Amazing. This is with a speed light, right? So we were trying to go for something really dark and dramatic, and dark in terms of aggressive and striking and dramatic. And this is one speed light with that reverse umbrella. And it's placed there in front, feathered a little bit. And then to get this look, we moved it back and up really high. Now, it's approximately there. And I can show you the video that shows you how feathered it was, but it was being held by my stylist. She took the light stand and held it even higher and tipped it over so that it was more over the model for just a few seconds to allow me to get that shot. Now, as we draw to a close, I have a challenge for you. If you're watching this live, if you can guess the setup, doesn't count. If you know me and I've told you, then it doesn't count. But if you don't, if you can guess this setup, what lighting I used, I will give you a present. The first person to get it right in the chat, I will come and look, and the first person who says it, I will contact you and I will give you a gift. Okay? Just give you a second to have a look. Not too long. Answers on a postcard? Not really. In the chat. Who remembers that? Answers on a postcard. That was a long time ago, wasn't it? I'm showing my age. Okay, that's it. So I'm going to give you the answer now. So that was the V1 Pro on camera. So the reason it doesn't look that much like on camera is because I've got it on camera, but I've got it bouncing off a V flat, and I'm using the sub flash, which is this little flash at the front, on a very low power to provide a little bit of forward fill. And I'm also blending it with the ambient light, which was natural daylight coming in through the window. So I use the V1 Pro with sub flash. There you can see I was sitting down. I've got the V flat there. I think I also at one point I had the umbrella as well, and I used the diffusion on the umbrella as a bounce as well. But it could be a wall. So you could, as long as you're sitting in the right position, close enough to the wall, with the right angle for where the person is sitting, you could do the same. And that's the result. So as we draw to a close, I invite you to join my Facebook group. Please come and join us. We're a lovely bunch. I'm in there. Dario, my husband and business partner, is in there, and we're answering questions and participating, and it's great fun. And I would also like to invite everybody watching to sign up for 5 days of freebies. If you sign up by scanning the QR code, I will send you something nice and free for the next 5 days. So with that, I will hand back over to Derek. Thank you very much. And I would love to answer some questions.
That was awesome and extensive. I was expecting like half of the diagrams. I'm like, man, we would have been good with like people come on, share like 3 different diagrams. I'm like, I feel like we got the whole catalog there.
Oh no, I've got loads more.
Like, man, there's 200 more. I'm like, man, what am I doing with my life? I need to get on it. I need to get on it, Sarah. We're gonna start it out here. Well, I do want to point out Tracy in the chat said V1 Pro. Trish said bouncing with the V flats in front. West Coast Vivi said V1 Pro feathered in an umbrella. Your people do know you.
Yeah, they do. But did they guess on camera though? Did they guess on camera?
Nobody said on camera. Nobody said, and I'm embarrassed to tell you my guess because
What was your guess?
I never would have said on camera. I thought you would have had the big octa or the big umbrella over, and I'm like, man, shows how much I know. I'm
No,
retiring
it's a
today.
deliberate trick though. It's a deliberate trick because to be fair, I did have the V flat positioned exactly where I wanted it. So, it's a little more difficult to just get that bounce just wandering around a reception room, for example. But, I did it on purpose, so it's
I knew there
okay.
was going to be a trick in there. I'm like, I know I'm wrong. That's why I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. But all right, let's get to some questions here. Tracy's asking, what degree grid do you use for your beauty dish?
Oh, I can't tell you the exact degree, but it's small, 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 the
Okay.
smallest, really, really small, because I want to keep it nice and tight.
Okay. Another question regarding not using a light meter or a gray card for measuring the exposure. Vivi is assuming you don't work with lighting ratios. Do you ever work with lighting ratios, or you just
No,
go based on feeling?
yeah. I I just look and I will, if I'm really being good, I will layer it. So I will do the overhead light first and the rim lights so I can see it without seeing anything else. But I know what it wants to look. I do use the histogram extensively.
Okay.
So I go by what I can see on the image, but because the image can sometimes not tell us the truth on the back of the camera, it's better if you're tethering, but I can't tether if I'm at a wedding. I do look at the histogram and I try to get I have the JPEG set up in camera so that the the histogram is going to be close enough to the raw file to be reliable. So I don't have any settings in the back of the camera so that the JPEG is going to throw me off, if that helps.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful time to be a photographer right now because for every photographer that's like there are still a lot of professional photographers that use light meters, they use gray cards, they swear by them, they say everybody should, but I'm kind of I go based on it's like if you know and you have experience, you can kind of dial in close to where you want to be first time out, and then it's just little adjustments here
Yeah,
and there. You're able to see
there's no
everything.
there's no right way, there's no wrong way. There are
Yeah,
some people who swear by light meters, and that's great. My brain just doesn't work that way. And
same.
if somebody says to me the inverse square law, my brain just goes, I don't want to have anything to do with that. No, 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 no. But the fact is, I understand the reverse, what is it, the inverse square law. I understand how it works, but only because I had to do it the hard way by just practicing and getting a feel for it. So now I just feel it instinctively. I just know that I need to pull the light back for for the spread to be more even. I know that, but that I just spent a long time practicing. But the good thing about doing that, and as I say, there's no right way, there's no wrong way. The important thing is to get there, and the important thing is to be able to see what it is you're doing, and be able to say, "This isn't what I want it to look like. I need to change this." Or let me try this. Okay, now it's working. And this is what I think is the step that people don't have. And if you rely too much on things like numbers and ratios, then that's taken away from you a little bit because there's no perfect ratio. My rim light might be so subtle and slight that it goes against what somebody else might say is correct. So it's all subjective. This is an art. It's an art form. What we do. There's no. It's entirely up to you what you want your image to look like.
Exactly, and I love that approach. I mean, I'm the same way, and I kind of feel it's like exposure in general with cameras now. The camera's giving you an exposure based on a mathematical calculation. The camera doesn't
Hmm.
know, is this what you want? It's not telling you this is a good exposure. You know what a good exposure is. It's like
Exactly.
the image of the silhouette or the almost complete silhouette.
Exactly.
A camera's going to spit out a calculation. A camera doesn't know, well, does Sarah want a full silhouette or does she want 90% silhouette with a little bit of detail? And that's where you come in. And I feel like sometimes people rely too much on the technical aspect. And sometimes you just have to have, I mean, a big part of it is your intent. I feel like you're very intentional. You know the look you want to go for. You know how to get there, more importantly. And that's what it comes down to rather than the calculation. It's okay, if I'm not where I want to be, I know what I need to change or what I need to move around to get to what the
Well,
vision is.
you say I know, but I don't always know. So,
All right.
so
Well,
sometimes,
let's go there.
yeah.
How much of a like how much do you have, for most stuff, I would say let's go majority. Majority of the time, do you have an idea or is it kind of like, okay, I know where I want to start and I kind of just go from there?
I'm very instinctual, so I will have a feeling that things are going terribly, terribly wrong, and I need to fix them in the studio. So I'll feel it in my gut, this isn't working. I need to change something. So at that point, if I feel that, I know that I need to stop, just take a few minutes, look, try something else. Perhaps I need to do this. And then when it works, I'm euphoric. So this is something that I feel, and I can't, there's no equation for me, the way that I work, there's no equation for that. I just have to, and that's why I love doing what I do. And I'm if I was just shooting clients day in, day out, I'd probably just have one setup and I would just leave it there. But because I teach as well, I'm always looking for new things. I'm trying to think outside the box. I'm trying to come up with something different. And so that pushes me to try and go for something else. So when I say that I'm in the studio and things are going wrong, that's not for a client because I wouldn't, that's when I'm playing. I'm what I'm talking about when I'm playing.
How many setups do you generally like if it is client work? If it's something where they're open and it's not like, hey, we're going for a specific look, how many looks are you going to, or what kind of light kit are you gonna bring everything out and stick to two
No,
setups, or
no, 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 no. I would, as I said, I worked for many years with the AD 200s, and sometimes I'd start off with natural light because I have this beautiful light in my studio, which is just gorgeous. It's very, very flattering. So I can just have everybody facing towards the window and everyone looks gorgeous. Everyone looks wonderful. If I want something a little bit more dramatic, then I'd pull out the light. But one, maybe two, probably. It would be for commercial that I might start adding a little bit more. And then my creative work, which is what I do for teaching.
okay. And for the people who are working with a smaller studio, smaller space, they might live in an apartment, they might be just space, got to keep it tight. What is the good softbox or umbrella size? I feel like it's always nice to be able to have that 6, 8 foot umbrella or softbox. Is a 3 foot for most applications, is that going to be good enough?
Well, if it's portrait, then yeah, because you just bring the softbox really close and then it's a giant softbox. It's all relative. So if you need the space to get full length and drama and and you don't want to rely on Photoshop to make things look bigger and taller and things like that, then you're a little bit limited. But my studio is not huge. But if you're in a tiny apartment, and you're working with portrait and beauty and headshots and that kind of thing, no problem whatsoever. You don't need lots of space at all.
Okay, that's good to know for us New York people.
Yeah,
We're not
I have
always
a
working
friend.
with a lot of space.
I have a friend in New York who's been a beauty photographer for many years, shoots for Vogue and Elle, and she works out of her apartment, her living room, but she shoots beauty. So it's all, it's like, it's all of this stuff. But yeah,
You
work with
make
what
do
you
with
got.
what you have.
You make do with what you have. And then, or you go outside and rent a studio. There's always a way. If I really need
Sarah's given
height,
us 500 setups to get started on, so nobody has an
yeah, just
excuse. You got the
so I
starter
knew that
kit.
it was a lot. I knew it was a lot, but I just thought, you know what? They can always go back and watch it. And, if it gives you an idea to try something, then go ahead and try it. And as but do try it. Try it
I
and
mean,
see how it.
that's all. Sarah, I don't think you probably, maybe you do realize that 99% of us out here have no creativity without someone showing us or telling us 45 degrees, one light, maybe a bounced light or a reflector over here. And
Yeah.
that's like the extent. So it's good to see, and then to see the results, to know what we're working with, because you can take that then into like a client and say, okay, well, we want something dramatic. And how many people are
Yeah,
like, okay, well, what's dramatic light? Or what is this?
absolutely.
So trust, you have helped us so much. And I say us, I'm including myself in that us, because it's hard to really reach out there and pull from creativity that you don't have. So I'm gonna end it on one final question here, a little easy one. Tracy has already, you've sold her on the Godox system. So Tracy's all ready to switch over. Any advice for somebody who wants to switch to the Godox system? What's a good starting kit for someone to switch over to the Godox system?
I would have to say, well, it depends what you, of course, it depends what you want to do. If you are going to, if you want to shoot in the studio and out of the studio, and you really need portability, then I would say the 200s, because they're just so, it's so much power for such a small brick of a light. It can go in a handbag, it could probably go in a pocket. And yet it's, as I said, that was my studio light for many years. I loved it, and I took it to weddings, and that was a game changer. If you want a workhorse for the studio with the fast recycle times, with the power that will give you, you want to shoot f8, you need a little bit more power, then I think the new 8600 Pro 2s are amazing. Another good flexible one is the 300. Once again, it's portable, not as portable as the 200s. But weddings, I take with me always the two 8200s or three, and the V1 Pro and the 8300. So the 8300 comes out for the group shots. The 200s are for the receptions, and the V1 Pro is on camera. So, and it's used as a trigger to set everything else off. In the studio, I've got the 600, the 200s, and the 300. So it really, you've got to weigh up portability with power. What are your priorities? But I get this, people write to me with this all the time, and yeah,
It's not one size
I'm
fits
happy to
all.
answer. So.
Yeah, it's hard to, yeah, it depends on what you're using it for. Some
Yeah,
people don't want to carry a lot of gear, some people aren't able to, and some people
yeah.
like to bring everything to every shoot. So that's a
If
good starting point.
okay, let me put it this way: if you said you can only keep one, it would be the 200.
Okay. And that's like the balance of the most between power, versatility, and being able to do
Yes.
it's the most versatile.
Yeah, especially for the way I shoot, because in the studio I like to shoot at f2 anyway, so I don't need a whole bunch of power. So if I
Mm.
had to choose, it would be my 200s. Yeah.
And I feel like it's probably pretty fair to say a lot of people are people who aren't experienced or who don't know what they need. They can probably get away with way less than they think they need. Everybody thinks they're going to be overpowering the sun, or there's always like a what if. And then when you actually do get it, I've bought very powerful lights, and half the time I'm like, why? Now they're too big to bring out, they're too heavy, they're too big to carry around. I probably could have done with a speed light to be really real,
Yeah.
but even
Well,
like you said, like a 200 size.
that's actually my advice to people when they're starting out with lights. I say, just get a speed light. Just get a speed light, the simplest, cheapest speed light you can get hold of, and just master that, and then think about investing money. Because I have people, they have tiny studios, and they've bought 1,000 watt power light, and then they're like, everything's too bright. I don't know how to, and they've got to put a neutral density filter on their lens to try and get down. So yeah, you do often need a lot less than you think. Yeah, it's true.
Look at that. A camera retailer telling you not to go out and buy everything. Start
Well,
simple.
I would, I have all of the toys, so I'm not one to I'm not one to talk.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's great advice. Start simple, master it. That's the most important thing. If you can't
Yeah,
master a
yeah,
speed light,
absolutely.
you're not ready for anything else. Sarah, it's
Exactly.
always great having you on. Beautiful, beautiful body of work. And
Thank you.
Sarah's one of the few people that will go in, you'll answer the comments, you'll answer the questions, you do respond, which I love. I mean, I think everyone wants to, they have these really specific questions, and sometimes it's hard to boil everything into a couple different responses there. So huge thank you to Sarah, and of course Godox for hosting, and to all of our viewers out there. It's always great to have you engaged in what we have going on. Head over to YouTube if you haven't already. You can find this and all of our other recorded content. On behalf of Sarah, Godox, the rest of the B&H team, that is it. Another edition of the B&H virtual event space now in the books. Catch y'all next time.
Bye.